Kia ora, welcome back. I'm here with Laura Dargaville, aka Auntie. Auntie is a critical part. I know all the role that she does within Future Focus, but I'm not going to explain it. I'm going to let Auntie explain what she does. Welcome to the podcast.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me. Yes, so he doesn't actually know what I do. He has no idea. So my role, in a nutshell, I was just saying probably the best description for me in my mind is something in Te Ao Mauri, which is Kaiāwhina. So I feel like I am behind the scenes helping everyone in different spaces. But if you were to put a role or a title on that, it would be administrator. So I started off at Pat Beach, 20 hours a week there as solely administrator for that centre. And over time I've moved into a full-time capacity, I guess, and working amongst all 4 centres, soon to be 5, and as well as being in the leadership space. So a little bit about what I do, I guess. I've taken a step back a bit from enrolments and stuff, but moving into the HR space, WINS, I take a lot of the WINS subsidies, do a lot of mahi around that in that space, as well as ELP, any sort of support payments there, and just work closely with the leadership team and whatever they need help with.
I think it's quite a critical piece to and that's a good space to walk down now, is the role with the whānau, with the leadership team, because effectively all our roles should be around enabling teachers to teach. And I think, you think about your recent experience with the cousin at the tangi, in those scenarios, you're involved in that space. And I often look at a tangi as being a great example of people mahiing together for that person, for our our whānau that's passing on. I think it's a good avenue to look at that in terms of how we as a business are structured. Yes. It's ultimately about the person in that key role, which is, the whānau that's deceased. But I know I'm not trying to be in a morbid way, but I always look at that model. And I think, so Auntie's role is about enabling greater efficiency so that teachers get to teach, right?
Yeah, 100%. First and foremost for me, and my role, I mean the kaiko, their within our centre, their decisions and everything that they do in their role is for the children first and foremost, whereas I am of a different mindset. Yes, it's about the children. Of my own twins go to a centre here, but for me in my role, I feel like at the forefront of my decisions and in my mind is always the kaiko themselves and the team. So, they're obviously my priority, and I'm wanting to support them in as best I can in that space, because in order for them to be great teachers, we need to have a good support system behind them, and that's what drives me.
Yeah, I think that's evident in the mahi you do. And I think we've always talked that kaupapa of Teachers First. It's been a critical piece to our success.
Yes.
And that's purely because I've come from being in an education space and got frustrated out of my career. But when you see the day-to-day challenges that a teacher faces, what are some examples of how you ease those pressures?
Yeah.
Or that we as a leadership team ease, because you're part of a team. It's not you. It's not your role individually, right?
Yeah.
It's us as a collective.
I guess what I love about my role is I do spend a lot of time not on the floor as such with the children, but at the desk, which is, I guess, the communal ground of the centres. So you have lots of kaiko, your team walking past a lot of the time. So just being able to hold space for them in that aspect, from, just having a little kōrero with them about their day, to digging a bit deeper into what's going on for them. You recognise their behaviours and their body language as you see them so much. So for me, it's important to build on those relationships and and ask questions and, you know, check in if they're okay, and also compliment them when you're seeing them do something, you know, meeting and exceeding expectations of what we're about as Future Focus whānau. So I think in that aspect I couldn't really put anything into detail, but just taking that time to kōrero with them, noticing when things are feeling a bit off, a bit like an ear to the ground, and then being able to take that aspect into the leadership space or to the centre managers, because they are so busy, so it's good to have another set of eyes or you know, another person for them to kind of talk to as well, because sometimes things do get missed, but just trying to show our kaiko that we value them hugely and we appreciate their mahi, so just trying to take care of them and look out for them as much as we can.
It's crazy because ultimately the product we have is entirely built around the teaching product, right? We can have, we're fortunate in our own organisation to have plenty of support networks. I know, you know, we've obviously got yourself and Sammy and Lauren, Caro, then myself and Courtney. So, you know, there's a large portion of people that are not exactly tied to a centre, but that are tied to support. Then we've got our amazing centre leaders, and it's such a critical space, because all it allows us to do is enhance and celebrate the environment and success of our teaching team, right?
Yeah, and we talk a bit about the philosophy of know me before you teach me, and it's also the same with our kaiko as we work together, like knowing them before we lead them or before we work beside them. I think that's a huge, a critical aspect to working well as a collective and creating a culture, one that we're proud of, but one that we're thriving in. And I think like that to me is probably something that I find hugely valuable working for Future Focus. It's really, really special what we are creating, and what we have created and what we're about to keep building on is pretty special. Yeah.
Just going back, because this isn't your first stint in the sector, you know, I know you were part of the AFI team with the Best Start, and you learned some lessons. So there was Izzy or Bronny?
LeBron.
So, you know, that
9.
was with Auntie's, one of her older sons. But have you seen massive change in that time in the sector?
It's quite weird comparing the two roles. Obviously, it was a different time and space in my life, but I guess the teachers in our, I hate to compare the two, but the teachers at Future Focus, it feels different. If I could work off of.
So when we talk about feel, let's dig into what feel is.
Feeling for me is, in Te Ao Māori, it's Wairua. It's Mauri. I talk a lot in the leadership space about the Mauri of the whare, and I see Future Focus as our own whare, as our own marae, and I treat it in that way. You know, when somebody comes through the door, you know, everybody welcomes them, you acknowledge them, the people in the whare, they are your whānau, you look after them, you work together as a collective to take care of each other, the children, you know. So I think when I say feeling, I talk about the Mauri, the life force, if you do not know what the translation is for that. So the life force or the essence of our centres. When I talk about feeling, I'm talking about that there is Mauri there. It feels, you know, it feels, I don't know, it's just deeper than what I can explain in words, I guess.
How do we... you know, and I agree with you. I think part of it is because this business hasn't been formulated out of profit. It's been, you know, I think that's a major contributor to the ability for authenticity to seep through in Mauri, in essence, in spirit, because ultimately we know we have a responsibility to provide the greatest care we can for our whānau.
Yeah.
If it's built not saying that profits are wrong, and that's part of the risk that we, in terms of the reward that we take on, but if it's led from that, then you really can get into a place of trouble when it comes to Mauri, right? You think about Sinek's messages around why, and what the bro talks about with that, what do you think is, what's been your take on the why part for Future Focus as an organisation?
I feel like with our probably more so our leadership team over the last year that I've been there, we've been really unpacking our why. And I guess for the Mauri to exist within the whare, within the centre, we have to be connected to that why. It can't be of monetary value. Obviously that plays an important factor, but at the forefront of what we do, why we do what we do every day has to be, you have to be connected to your why, or your people within your whare need to be looking to find out what their why is, actively looking. And I think like the downside to that are obviously people that don't agree with that, aren't interested in their why, kind of see it as a little bit silly, maybe not hugely important. And I guess I say downside, meaning that you could potentially lose a qualified team member because of it, and they'll jump ship or whatever. But I think the power behind having people that stay in the waka or stay in the whare because they are connected to their why is no monetary value will ever amount to being a part of a whānau, of a collective that are all drawn and connected to their why, because it's such a powerful thing. And if you haven't been a part of it, I encourage you to look for that, because what we have is pretty special, but it should be standard across the board, I believe.
And look, to be honest, I probably believe that in other centres, they also really appeal to people's why. When it comes to our own organisation, I often think of where the why hasn't worked. That's the best evidence of. Well, I think it's a good gauge on whether our why is strong enough or communicated strong enough.
That's probably one of our biggest challenges.
But one of the solutions to that is people having access to people like myself and Courtney, having access to people like you, Lauren, Sammy, Caro. Then the leadership team. Like, we really try to prioritise them getting out and talking to one another, right?
And it's in the prioritisation of that, which is hard. We're growing, but it's a priority, like you say, but it's also authentic. And that is such a powerful thing.
It's not forced.
When you are connected to your why, all those conversations that you have or the space that you hold for your people is authentic, and those conversations are hugely valuable. You start to plant seeds amongst others that have never thought of having a why. A job's a job, we just need to pay the bills, we need to put a roof over our head. But once you're connected or surrounded by people that are connected to your why, it inspires others to do so. We only get one life, Why would you not want to find what your why is, find a purpose in life? It's such a nice feeling when you stop chasing money and you just connect yourself to your why and your purpose, because like you always say, the money will always come, It'll always work itself out, but knowing that you are doing something of great importance every single day, you wake up every day excited and happy, and in tow, your mental health, your taha hinengaro is healthy, and at a time like this, that's really important.
So let's dig into that a wee bit. A time like this. It's an interesting time in 2023. I think what's going on in the world in terms of economy and doom and gloom is certainly at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And but what do you see as Future Focus's or not even that, like early childhood sector? What's our contribution to supporting whānau in those spaces.
What has been our
Yeah.
contribution so far?
In this space where it is a bit doom and gloom, where people are feeling uneasy, there is, it's a hard message to swallow for many people when all the media is around doom and gloom, and we're turning around and saying, but if you've got a strong why, don't worry about money will come. That is a hard pill to swallow for many whānau, especially when there's a lot of those things out of their control.
Yeah.
But I also know that and I can only really speak for Future Focus, but where we've really tried to up the game is we've tried to increase value as much as we can. We've really, and this is where our teams have just been so phenomenal. They're just constantly bringing value.
Yeah, every day. And I think that's where Sammy, who is in charge of our social media space and getting that footage out to the whānau to realise, to put that out on Instagram in real form, I guess, is to capture those small moments where our kaiko are adding value, because I feel like it's not appreciated, not because people don't want to, but I think they just don't know, and they drop their kids off at daycare and come back and pick them up, and they see just small glimpses into their day, the morning drop off and the end result, which could be maybe a messy face and wet clothes and things like that, but you're missing a whole 6 to 8 hours in between of what actually is going on and where our amazing kaiko are adding value. So I think that's where Sammy's role is hugely important, because we're able to give them a bit more of an insight as to what a day entails and how we're adding value. And I think just going back to your question and about what are we doing to contribute to our whānau in that space, it kind of drew me back to when I first started with you guys, which was only about a year and a bit ago, and Britt was the centre manager at the time. I think our chef called in sick anyway. We had a whānau that was going through some tough times, a couple of sick kids, and I think one had just gotten out of hospital. Our chef had called in sick, so Britt and I were in the mud cooking up some kai, and if you know me and Britt, it's a bit of a messy kitchen, but anyway, Britt was like, we've got to make some kai for this whānau that's sick, because mum's on her own and we need to really get in there and give her some support. She's a bit down, and that's just what we do here. And then in that moment I was like, this is the right place for me. So I think we do, like, that was a really standout thing for me, and I always think back to that, and it was something that continued to happen across that time, and that makes me proud, knowing that we are not just providing a service for the children, but providing a support network for the whānau, and it's about whakawhanaungatanga, connecting with our whānau, holding space for them, whether that's through conversation. I mean, we might not be able to solve their problems in monetary value, but being able to hold space for them and try and support them as best we can with hardship, because there's so many going through it at the moment.
In terms of that support space around that whakawhanaungatanga, I think it's worth digging in a wee bit also there too, because what that looks like, if we're talking about what our staff, what our teaching team do, our kaiako, it is those small conversations start and end a day.
Yeah,
It is, like, I'm very lucky. I get to see the all the story park notes that come out from every centre, and the amount of notes I see being sent. Kia ora, such and such is now all good and out playing in the sandpit. Just sending you a photo. And it's crazy, because I know we've had whānau move on from Future Focus into the schooling system, and they've been very spoilt with us, and then they've been like, hey, I emailed the teacher, but they don't get back to me, and I'm like, that's not the done thing.
Yeah.
But it is those small pieces, day to day, done consistently, that mount.
Yes. Yeah, massively. And then I guess, like, holding space for the whānau, but then when we go back to, like, adding value, I mean, there's little things like Michelle at the batch comes to mind. She goes home and makes all sorts of things, props and for whatever event they're having, puppets, and she's got her sewing machine out and she's doing, this and that at home outside of mahi, not getting paid for it, because that is one person that is hugely connected to her why. And those are little things that our kaiako do to add value that aren't seen or heard by the whānau, if you could showcase that, we see it, we feel it, but I guess just paying a bit more attention to when you walk into a day that's me as a parent, when I walk in and there's disco day, I look around and I see these decorations and I think, who got here early enough to do this? Yes. Knowing that, they've done that outside of their shift, and they put in so much effort, and that's because they are connected to their why, and I think that's a hugely important piece as to why we bring a lot of value in that space.
I think the value piece as we go on in society, if you are not able to visibly see value in what's going on as a consumer, I think you've got to start questioning what's going on above too, because we're lucky, right, Auntie? We get to get around all the centres and see what everyone's up to.
Yeah.
But I also know that we love telling our team's stories. That's why Sam's role's been so critical, because it could be seen and interpreted as entirely marketing. But actually, what's always been on my mind is about telling stories.
Yes.
I love telling the stories of our teaching team.
Because you are a storyteller.
Yeah. Love a yarn, eh? Yeah. But I am gifted in the storytelling space. But I take pride in seeing it, because, you're talking about Michelle there. I want to give a shout out to Michelle as well, because it's quite fitting. But they had an 80s day last Thursday, and all the kids came out in their best 80s gear. And it was just fantastic. There was so much going on, but that is actually on the day-to-day for a lot of our teams. Like we've got, in terms of what's going on, what visits going on to retirement villages. We've got, connecting with the local Sikh community. We've got musicians, musical pieces coming into the centres, dance. We've got cultural spaces are being held really, really strongly in terms of supporting the different cultures within our organisation. We acknowledge a lot of that for within our own diversity of staff. There is just so much visible value. And now that I talk to you about this, I think we have spoken about increasing value, but actually that word visible, increasing value and visibility, is quite critical to that strategy pyramid.
Yeah, massively.
We've got so much great stuff going on right now.
Yeah. And
not by chance.
No.
It's not fluke.
No, it's not.
It's not fluke. It's well-led centres for a starter. People like Rosie, Melissa, Ashley and Renee. And then ably supported by, the Karens and the Rose and all those different people at the other levels, in that space. There's just so much cool stuff going on that is not a fluke.
No way in hell is it a fluke. Yeah. And I think just going back to, if we do have any of our whānau listening into the podcast, and as you asked me that question about what are we doing to contribute to our whānau, like obviously not with their children, as well as themselves, as if there's a whittle, I guess, to you guys out there, your whānau out there, if you can think of a way that we could help add value to your life, please reach out. He aha te kai o te rangitira, he kōrero. So, what is the kai of the leaders? It's communication. So please speak with us if you think there's a way that we can help support you through hardship, just through life, through parenting. We're doing the best we can, but we're also curious about how we can do that better. And that's all we want to do, is keep building and doing better. So please reach out. Like, we're all willing to learn and listen and to try new things, which is what I love about us.
Yes, long may that continue. Well, we'll wrap it there. I think, thank you, Auntie. This won't be the last time I get you on here. I know you've got lots of other stuff to share, and you know, as we continue to grow and try to continue to bring major value to the sector, to what I believe is one of the most important sectors in the country, because our impact on whānau and what we can do to support them and to them pushing ahead in life is huge. And then also our role in the development of young people who are going to, you know, they're going to be the face of Aotearoa in the next, you know, 20, 25 years.
Yes.
You know, there is potentially another Prime Minister out there. There's potentially the next entrepreneur that you know, there is potentially the next musician, the next artist, the next academic.
Future focus owner.
Yeah. They, you know, they are within our midst right now. That excites me. You know, I often think of that. I often think of what does it look like for a child that's been at Future Focus? What do they look like as a 21-year-old? You know, that's a bit of a pivotal age in Aotearoa, so I often think about that. I think morally we should be thinking about that, but it's just because I'm a big dreamer that I do like to think about what kids will look like, and right now I know we are certainly creating environments that will hopefully facilitate the next, like I said, the next Prime Minister or the next Steve Jobs or something like that. I truly do believe that. So, but that's only done with people like you. I think the mahi that you do is just so critical. I do know what you do most of the time. I'm just not I'm just in my own head probably more so, but we appreciate what you do, Auntie. So thank you very much for coming on, and I'll talk to you soon.
Sure. Ka kite.